They mocked her. Now they're begging for mercy. Karoline Leavitt had always known the media could be ruthless, but nothing had prepared her for the ambush that unfolded on live television one fateful evening. Invited onto a popular talk show under the guise of discussing a new policy proposal, Karoline walked onto the stage expecting a serious debate. Instead, from the moment she sat down, it was clear that the show had a different agenda. The opening minutes were deceptively ordinary. A few routine questions, polite nods, and rehearsed introductions. But then, without warning, one of the hosts leaned forward, his tone sharp and condescending. "Let's be honest, Karoline," he said, his voice dripping with insinuation. "You're not here because you're qualified. You're here because your loyalty got you the seat. Isn't that right?" A ripple of shocked murmurs spread through the studio audience. Gasps, stifled laughter, and uneasy glances filled the air, each reaction intensifying the tension. Karoline's expression remained composed, but inside she felt the sting of betrayal. This wasn't a fair exchange of ideas, it was a calculated attack. Steeling herself, she replied evenly, "I'm here because I earned my position through hard work and integrity. I'm prepared to discuss policy, not personal attacks." Yet, her measured response only seemed to fuel the onslaught. Another host smirked as he interjected, "Earned? Or simply handed a cushy spot because you played the loyalty card? Let's not pretend it's all merit." The segment quickly degenerated into a barrage of interruptions, dismissive laughter, and leading questions that sought to undermine every point Karoline made. The scripted nature of the exchange became evident as the hosts exchanged knowing glances, their cues as if pre-planned. The studio lights, which had once illuminated a platform for serious debate, now spotlighted a performance aimed solely at humiliating her. As the minutes dragged on, it became clear to everyone watching that this was no spontaneous clash of opinions. It was a coordinated effort to discredit her. The chat in the studio audience turned from mild curiosity to palpable discomfort. Whispers and sideways glances passed among the viewers, many of whom recognized that this wasn't an honest journalistic inquiry, but an orchestrated media stunt. Despite the barrage, Karoline maintained her calm. With a quiet firmness, she continued to counter each assault with facts and clear logic. "If we are to have a real conversation about policy, let's leave personal bias at the door," she insisted. But the hosts were relentless. One of them leaned in once more and declared, "Women like you, with your kind of background, only set us back. Deep down, you know it." For a moment, the room fell into a heavy silence, a silence that spoke louder than any rebuttal. Karoline's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in a sorrowful recognition of the system that had forced her into this corner. In that silence, she realized that her attack wasn't solely about her policies or her competence. It was a personal vendetta, a premeditated attempt to diminish her credibility and tarnish her reputation. When a segment wrapped up, the damage was done on air, but the story was far from over. Within hours, the clip of the interview exploded across social media. The unedited version circulated widely, exposing the host's scripted interruptions and blatant bias. Hashtags like hashtag stand with Karoline, hashtag media bias exposed, and hashtag cancel the show trended as viewers, particularly conservatives, condemned the network's tactics. Even some liberal critics, uncomfortable with the overt hostility, admitted that the treatment was unprofessional and unfair. The network scrambled for damage control. They issued a series of tepid statements, attempting to reframe the segment as nothing more than a heated debate among differing viewpoints. However, the evidence was irrefutable. The unedited footage, leaked emails from within the production team, and testimonies from former staff members painted a damning picture. This was not isolated bad journalism, but a systemic, pre-planned attack on voices that dared to challenge the prevailing narrative. In a quiet, dimly lit office in Washington, D.C., Karoline met with her legal team. Stacks of printed emails and internal memos lay scattered across the table, each piece of evidence reinforcing the deliberate nature of the ambush. Her lead attorney, a seasoned litigator with a reputation for taking on media conglomerates, explained, Karoline, the defamation and professional harm you've suffered isn't just about what was said on air. It's about an orchestrated attempt to destroy your reputation and silence your voice. The gravity of the situation was clear. This was not merely about a misbehaving talk show. It was about media accountability and the very ethics of journalism. As the legal battle began to take shape, more revelations emerged. An anonymous former producer came forward with damning testimony. In an interview, she admitted that the show's segment had been pre-planned to humiliate conservative guests. They were given strict instructions, she revealed, to interrupt, to belittle, and, if necessary, to cut off any responses that didn't fit the narrative. The testimony was bolstered by leaked documents and unedited footage from previous interviews, which starkly contrasted the respectful treatment of liberal guests with the calculated harassment of those on the conservative side. The network's internal chaos was soon public. Executives held frantic meetings, and press conferences were held in a desperate attempt to salvage their credibility. One major sponsor, under immense public pressure, pulled out of the network, citing the unacceptable nature of the segment and the network's failure to uphold basic journalistic standards. The ensuing media frenzy only intensified as critics from across the political spectrum condemned the network's behavior, calling for industry-wide reforms. For Karoline, this moment became a turning point. Instead of retreating into silence, she decided to take action. With her legal team by her side, she filed a lawsuit for defamation, professional damage, and targeted harassment. Her lawsuit wasn't just about personal vindication. It was a stand for all those who had been unfairly attacked and discredited by a media system that prioritized sensationalism over truth. The trial that followed was a media spectacle in its own right. Courtrooms were packed with reporters, and every detail was broadcast live. Karoline's attorneys laid out a meticulous case, presenting evidence of the scripted nature of the show, the disparaging emails exchanged between producers, and the measurable impact on her career and reputation. Testimonies from former employees, including the brave former producer, shattered the network's claims of free and open debate, revealing a coordinated campaign to suppress dissent. Throughout the trial, Karoline remained composed. In her testimony, she spoke not only about the personal toll the attack had taken on her, but also about the broader implications for media integrity. The media's role is to inform, not to manipulate, she stated firmly. When voices are silenced through premeditated tactics, our democracy suffers. We all deserve to have our ideas challenged honestly, not ambushed for the sake of ratings. After days of intense courtroom battles, the jury delivered its verdict in favor of Karoline Leavitt. The decision was a resounding rebuke of the network's practices, awarding her a multi-million-dollar settlement and a public apology, a formal acknowledgement of the wrongs committed against her, and a commitment to re-examine journalistic ethics across the industry. The fallout was immediate and far-reaching. The network's stock plummeted, sponsors distanced themselves, and viewers demanded accountability. What had started as an orchestrated ambush had snowballed into a national reckoning about media bias and accountability. In the weeks that followed, numerous former employees came forward with additional evidence of similar practices, and calls for legislative reforms to protect against such targeted harassment of public figures grew louder. Karoline's lawsuit and the revelations that accompanied it sparked a renewed conversation about the role of media in shaping public discourse. Conferences, panel discussions, and public forums began to address how narratives were manufactured and the dangers of unchecked media power. For many, Karoline had become a symbol, a beacon for those tired of manipulation and eager for a media landscape that valued integrity over sensationalism. In interviews after the verdict, Karoline was measured yet resolute. "This isn't about personal revenge," she explained. "It's about ensuring that our society can trust the institutions that are meant to serve us. We must hold those in power accountable, whether they're politicians or media executives. Today, we've taken a step toward reclaiming our right to truthful, respectful dialogue." The case also ignited grassroots movements. Across the nation, citizens organized forums to discuss media ethics, with some groups even using Karoline's case as a model for advocating change. Social media platforms buzzed with discussions under hashtags like hashtag media accountability and hashtag stand with Karoline, as people from all walks of life shared their own experiences and called for reforms. In the end, Karoline Leavitt's decision to stand up against the ambush on live television transformed her from a target into a trailblazer. Her legal victory not only restored her reputation, but also ignited a broader movement to reform media practices. The network, once a dominant force in shaping narratives, found itself forced to confront its own ethical failings, and the ripple effects of the trial promised lasting changes within the industry. As the dust settled, one thing was clear: true accountability begins when individuals dare to speak out against injustice, even when the odds seem stacked against them. Karoline's journey was far from over, but her courage had sparked a dialogue that would resonate for years to come. A dialogue about truth, integrity, and the collective responsibility to ensure that the media remains a force for good. Have you ever witnessed a moment when standing up against the tide of public opinion changed the course of events? Share your thoughts in the comments and join the conversation about media ethics, accountability, and the power of a single voice to inspire change.